think that in big mature industries, that might be a winning approach in some cases, kind of close following. Let other people be the pioneers and and go down the blind alleys. There's many things that a new inventive company tries won't work. And so those mistakes and errors and failures do cost real money. And so maybe in a mature industry where growth rates are slow and change is very slow. But as you see in the world more and more, there aren't very many mature industries. Change is happening everywhere. We see it in the automobile industry with self-driving cars, but you could go right down the line of every industry and you would see it. Somehow, and this is a kind of mistake that only a corporation can make. An individual can't make this mistake because somehow it's like it happens at the intersections of the different teams. So you've got the legal department saying, "Oh crap, we've made this mistake," and you've got the books team. Anyway, the answer that the company came up with was to, without any notice or warning, just electronically go into everybody's Kindle who had downloaded that book and just disappear it. And so it was. So we were rightly criticized for that. It was, and we responded to that. On the issue of working conditions, I'm very proud of our working conditions, and I'm very proud of the wages that we pay. In Germany we employ 16,000 people. We pay at the high end of the range for any comparable work. This is in my longer version of how to deal with critics, because there are two kinds of critics. There are well-meaning critics who, they're worried it's not going to work, but they do want it to work. And so it could be, I could give you an example, customer reviews would be one of those. When we first did customer reviews 20 years ago, some book publishers were not happy about it because some of them are negative. And so it was a very controversial practice at that time, but we thought it was right, and so we stuck to our guns and had a deep keel on that and didn't. There's a second kind of critic, which is the self-interested critic, and they come in all shapes and sizes. So they can be any kind of institution, competitors, of course. And so when you are doing something in a new way, and if customers embrace the new way, what's going to happen is incumbents who are practicing the older way are not going to like you. And they're going to be self-interested critics. And so you do need, as you're looking yourself in the mirror, to try and tease those two things apart. In our view, we have workers' councils, of course, and we have very good communications with our employees. So we don't believe that we need a union to be an intermediary between us and our employees. But of course, at the end of the day, it's always the employee's choice, and that's how it should be. So but for sure, we would be very naive to believe that we're not going to be criticized. I mean, that's just part of the terrain. You have to accept that. One thing I tell people is, if you're going to do anything new or innovative, you have to be willing to be misunderstood. If you can't afford to be misunderstood, then for goodness sake, don't do anything new or innovative. For me, again, this is one of those things where, I focus on, and ask our teams to focus on what we can control. And I expect, whether it's the current U.S. administration or any other government agency anywhere in the world, Amazon is now a large corporation, and I expect us to be scrutinized. We should be scrutinized. I think all large institutions should be scrutinized and examined. It's reasonable. And one thing to note about us is that we have gotten big in absolute terms only very recently. So we've always been growing fast in percentage terms. But in 2010, just 8 years ago, we had 30,000 employees. So in the last 8 years, we've gone from 30,000 employees to 560,000 employees. So for us, it's kind of, in my mind, I'm still delivering the packages to the post office myself. You see what I'm saying? I still have all the memories of, so obviously that's my intellectual brain knows that's just not the case anymore. We have 560,000 employees all over the world, and I know we should be scrutinized. And I think it's true. Big government institutions should be scrutinized. Big nonprofit institutions should be scrutinized. Big universities should be scrutinized. It just makes sense. And that's, by the way, why the work that the Washington Post and the other great newspapers around the world do is so important, because they're often the ones doing that initial scrutiny even before the government agencies do. It's a natural instinct. I think we humans, especially in the Western world and especially inside democracies, are wired to be skeptical and mindful of large institutions of any kind. We're skeptical. I'm sure we're skeptical of our government always in the United States, state governments, local governments. I assume it's similar in Germany. It's healthy. Because they're big, powerful institutions. You know, the police, the military, whatever it is. It doesn't mean that you don't trust them or that they're bad or evil or anything like that. They're just, they have a lot of power and control, and so you want to inspect them. Maybe that's a better word. You kind of want to always be inspecting them. And I think if you look at the big tech companies, they have gotten large enough that they're going to be inspected. And by the way, it's not personal. I think where you can go astray on this if you're the founder of a company. I think of the internet. So the internet is this big, new, powerful technology. It's horizontal, it affects every industry. And then if you think of even more broadly tech and machine learning and big data and all these kinds of things, these are big, horizontal, powerful technologies. And in my view, so we've been at scale. The internet is quite old at this point. It's been around a long time, but at scale, it's really only been around, 10 or 15 years. Because, go back in time 20 years, it was tiny. And so at scale, the internet's been around only 10 or 15 years. And we haven't learned, as a civilization, as a human species, we haven't learned how to operate it yet. So we as a civilization are still figuring that out. And so it gives us fantastic capabilities. I mean, the fact that I can look up almost anything on Wikipedia in 5 seconds is an unbelievable capability that just simply didn't exist 20 years ago. And so on and so on and so on. There's so many good things. But we're also finding out that these powerful tools enable some very bad things too, like letting authoritarian governments interfere in free democratic elections around the world. This is an incredibly scary thing. First of all, we have a duty on behalf of society to try and help educate any regulators, give them our point of view on this sincerely, without any cynicism or skepticism. This is what we believe. And then, but it's not ultimately our decision. So we will work with any set of regulations that we're given. Ultimately, society decides that. We will follow those rules regardless of the impact they have on our business.